Good morning. We thank Leon Pride for their stirring drumming performance, invoking the power of rhythm, rooted in resilience and unity. This serves not only as a tribute of welcome, but as a resounding call to end all forms of violence, especially against women and girls. Senator Honorable Gloria Thomas, Minister for Social and Community Development, Housing and Gender Affairs. Mr. Finley Jeffrey, Permanent Secretary with responsibility for Community Development and Housing in the Ministry of Social and Community Development, Housing and Gender Affairs. And other permanent secretaries from the Government of Grenada. Mr. Victor Clark, British High Commissioner to Grenada. Ms. Luz Patricia Maia Guerrero, Technical Secretary of MESIVEC and other MESIVEC experts. Mr. Alfonso Martinez Saenz, Head of the Gender and Social Rights component of the EU program Inclusive Societies. Ms. Rosalie Lagrenade, OAS Grenada Office. Other representatives from the Diplomatic Corps, other senior government officials, staff of the Ministry of Social and Community Development, Housing and Gender Affairs, specially invited guests in person and online, members of the media and online viewers here at home and in the diaspora. A very warm welcome to all. On behalf of the Ministry of Social and Community Development, Housing and Gender Affairs, I extend heartfelt greetings and express our appreciation for your presence at this significant sub-regional consultation. Your commitment signals a shared dedication to advancing gender justice and addressing emerging challenges like digital gender-based violence. My name is Petra Louison. I'm the Public Relations Officer in the Ministry of Social and Community Development, Housing and Gender Affairs, and I will be taking you through to today's proceedings. We begin our formal proceedings with an invocation, and I now invite Mr. Anderson Richardson, Gender Program Development Officer at the Ministry, to lead us in prayer. Following this, we will remain standing for the national anthem rendered by accomplished pianist, Mr. Jason Skeet.
Good morning, everyone. Can we all stand for prayers? Great and eternal God, we thank you for life. We thank you, O God, for being in the land of the living. We thank you for being here this morning. Even as we are about to start this consultation, we pray from the very onset that you would take full charge and control, that you will bless our facilitators, that you will bless our presenters, that you will bless each and every one of us that will be here, that you will take charge and control of discussions. Oh God, at the end of the day, it will be for the benefit, the enrichment of the people that we serve, even as we look at legislations, we look at laws, we look at policies, we look at protocols. Bless, oh God, our deliberations, our discussions here today, and may it be fruitful and beneficial in the end. This we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you.
One correction here, it's going to be done by Andre Skeet and not Jason Skeet. Thank you very much, Mr. Skeet, for that lovely piece there. Can you please have your seats? Thank you. It is my pleasure to now invite Mr. Finley Jeffrey, Permanent Secretary with responsibility for Community Development and Housing from the Ministry of Social and Community Development, Housing and Gender Affairs, to deliver the official welcome remarks. Mr. Jeffrey.
Good morning, everybody. I must agree with our moderator, whoever infused and decided to infuse the drumming. It was a wonderful idea, but not for me at this time. Understanding the season that we are in, I came here to speak, but now I want to sing. And you know you don't want to get me started. Distinguished, let me recognize our Minister, Honorable Gloria Thomas, distinguished representatives of the OASIM and MSAGV, regional delegates and experts, national stakeholders, ladies and gentlemen. Now, it is my honor to welcome you, but before I officially do this, I have to give you a story. It's something that I never forgot. Now, I made 2 stints as Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Education. And during one of my stints, there was a young lady from a secondary school. She was 17. Very active in church, bright. And like all other teenagers, she communicated via WhatsApp, Snapchat, and so on. And she was communicating with a young man who she liked. And he encouraged her, pressured her to share a photo, a revealing photo of herself. He said it was for his eyes only. Well, in a matter of a week, it was shared and reshared, shared and reshared. And the shame was great. The school management, not understanding how to deal with it, they suspended her, because they said she brought the school into disrepute. Her parents took her phone away, grounded her. Nothing happened to the boy. Nothing happened to the boy. Long and short is that she became very distressed, and eventually, through counseling and so on, didn't help. She dropped out of school. Now, the story and the moral behind this and the message, one photo, that was all it took. But we can do whatever we can so that it does not happen to another girl. To all our foreign dignitaries, let me be the first to welcome you to the Isle of Spice. Everything is nice, and when I say everything, I mean everything. There's nothing that is not nice. And to everyone else, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you to this timely and important sub-regional consultation on the Inter-American Model Law on Digital Gender-Based Violence, hosted by the Government of Grenada through the Ministry of Social and Community Development, Housing and Gender Affairs. We are especially grateful to the Inter-American Commission of Women and MSAGV of the Organization of American States for partnering with us to facilitate this vital dialogue. Across the Caribbean, the rise in online harassment, non-consensual sharing of intimate images, cyber stalking, and other forms of technology-facilitated gender-based violence poses very real and immediate threats. These are not distant issues. They are happening here to our sisters. They are happening here to our neighbors, to our students. In Grenada, we have made meaningful progress Through the dedicated work of the Gender-Based Violence Unit, we have expanded access to services, built survivor networks, and strengthened public awareness. But the digital dimension of violence is evolving, and it is evolving rapidly. Technology is acting as a double-edged sword, because while it is empowering, it is also weaponizing. Our laws and systems, therefore, must evolve just as quickly. This is why I'm proud to share that Cabinet has recently given approval for the development of a draft legislation on care and digital violence. This is not just about catching up with the times. It is about being bold, it is about being proactive, and placing survivors at the center of our legal and policy responses. Our goal is thus quite clear: to safeguard individuals, especially women and girls, in both physical and virtual spaces. This consultation, therefore, is not merely a legal exercise. It is a call to action. It is an opportunity to align national frameworks with regional standards, to elevate survivor voices, and to develop smart, responsive strategies to protect those who are most vulnerable. The Inter-American Model Law offers us a powerful blueprint, but we must breathe life into that blueprint by grounding it in local realities and community wisdom. We must also recognize that governments cannot do this work alone. In Grenada, we are fortunate in that we collaborate with committed partners such as Soroptimist International Grenada, Legal Aid and Counseling Clinic, and several regional institutions. Together, we promote training, expand survivor services, and engage men and boys in transformational conversations. Our community youth leaders, civil society, and most importantly, survivors must remain at the heart of this work that we do. As we engage in this consultation, I encourage open dialogue, honest reflection, and strategic collaboration. Let us listen deeply. Let us challenge ourselves. Let us draw from the diversity of our experiences, whether they be legal, whether they be lived experiences, whether they be learned. And let's try to co-create a future in which online spaces are safe, inclusive, and respectful for all. Once again, I extend my heartfelt thanks to Sim, Ms. Egver, and to each of you here today for your enduring commitment to gender equality, justice, and human dignity. May this consultation be both productive and inspiring. Thank you, and welcome.
Thank you very much, PS, for your warm welcome. And to all of us here, and those of us listening online, let's remember that if we can only help one vulnerable person, it's a step in the right direction. I would like to warmly welcome Mr. Victor Clark, the British High Commissioner to Grenada, who's just joined us. Welcome, sir. We're now honored to receive remarks by Shona Alexander Benjamin, Vice President of the Committee of Experts of the MISECV and expert of Trinidad and Tobago, Ms. Rosalie Lagrenade.
Good morning, everyone. It is indeed a pleasure to be here. I just want to play a small sound before I give my remarks. Imagine that sound you just heard isn't a simple notification. Imagine with me, the sound is a horrific notification of a message that threatens your safety, undermines your sense of security and reputation, and a sound that invades your privacy. This isn't an imagination exercise. For thousands of women and girls living in the Caribbean and Latin America, it is unfortunately their daily reality. Today we are gathered here in the beautiful island of Grenada, the Isle of Spice, beauty and generosity, and my parents' homeland. My father was Leroy Cador, used to be called Cabbage, and my mother was known as Queen from Victoria. Some may know my cousin, Aga Alexander. On a solemn day like today, we come together to co-build a region where safety, peace, and security are paramount for our future, depends on it. Did we hear that? Our future depends on what we do today. It is an honor to stand before you at the opening of this high-level consultation on the Inter-American Model Law to prevent, punish, and eradicate digital gender-based violence against women, and to stand in this presence and honor the Minister for your gracious invitation, and all senior officials here today, the esteemed international and regional representatives, dedicated national experts and specialists. It is a pleasure to welcome civil society representatives, the supporting staff at the SIM and MASECV at the OAS, fellow Caribbean experts who are here with us, and the media. Your presence is not by chance. This is a history-making moment for us all. Your contribution will support shaping a model law whose time is far overdue. The statistics paint a harrowing picture. The 5-country prevalence rate report survey by UN Women found that Grenada has a 39% prevalence rate of violence against women. Guyana, 55%. Jamaica, 39%. Suriname, 49%, and Trinidad and Tobago, 44%. The threat is significantly amplified if we translate these figures to the digital realm, where information spreads at lightning speeds and where the screen emboldens the perpetrator. The issue of cyberstalking, harassment, and threats, inclusive of the use of AI to generate deepfake porn, is spreading terrors, as many use these images and videos to extort money or favors, holding people's lives at ransom. Online violence is a threat. It is an act of terrorism to democracy, and it seeks to silence women's voices, push them out of formal political spaces, and shame them as they embrace leadership roles. While we have advanced as societies, we cannot forget that violence is also evolving, and women and girls are now at a greater risk of various types of violence and harm. The economic cost of violence against women and girls is beyond staggering. A 2024 news report from UN Women showed that it cost Grenada $63 million annually to respond to violence against women. However, all is not lost, because the Inter-American Model Law is a crucial step forward. It provides a comprehensive framework rooted in the Convention of Belém do Pará principles to address the evolving threat of digital violence. It recognizes all forms of violence, including digital gender-based violence, which is a violation of human rights. It calls for states not to only talk about this threat, but engage in foresight and anticipatory governance and leadership to prevent, investigate, punish, and ensure restitution for all forms of violence against women and girls, whether it's offline or online. This consultation allows us to move further and use the model law to uniquely respond to this evolving threat. Anticipatory leadership, again, is needed. And the permanent secretary, Jeffrey, spoke about that foresight and that proactive leading. We must strengthen legal and policy frameworks to adequately define and hold people accountable for perpetrating digital violence. We must enhance protection and support services for survivors, ensuring they have access to justice, safe digital spaces, and financial and psychological support. Promote digital literacy, education to build and shape mental models, and critical thinking to facilitate a supportive environment where women and girls can safely navigate the digital spaces, online and offline. Foster greater collaboration among governments, civil society, technology companies, international organizations, and professionals and experts near and far. We cannot afford to be complacent. External shocks are impacting the Caribbean at speed. Societies and structures are being undermined. Our responses must also evolve. The silence and discomfort of discussing such topics must be disrupted, and the boldness of perpetrators offline and online must end. Today, I end with this call on all of us to commit to translating the insights and learnings from this consultation into concrete, actionable steps. Let us leverage our collective expertise, resources, and political will to ensure that the Inter-American Model Law is not just a document, but a living, breathing safeguard for women and girls and for all families against any type of violence that exists in our society. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lagrenade. Unity. Alexander Benjamin. Sorry. Unity is strength. What we do today determines our future. Joining us virtually is Mr. Alfonso Martinez Sáenz, head of the Gender and Social Rights component of the EU Program on Inclusive Societies. We now invite him to share his reflections on today's timely initiative.
Thank you very much, colleagues, authorities. Thank you very much for the invitation, for this opportunity for the Caribbean to reflect and to think about some initiatives and the main challenges around gender-based violence in the sub-region. We've been working with MESEGBI for the past few years. We really think what they're doing, not only in Latin America, but also in the Caribbean. So we are very glad to be here to discuss with you on these opportunities. Thank you very much, Luz Patricia, Eva, for all your work. And of course, to be in Grenada, to be working so closely. I work on the European program, Inclusive Societies, and I mainly coordinate the first component, which aims to reduce and to tackle inequalities, gender inequalities. And one of them is really right to fight gender-based violence and to improve the living conditions of women and other diversity in Latin America and the region. We can work on 33 countries, including Caribbean. So this is a great opportunity for us to start approaching the national authorities in the Caribbean to try to find some ways of action, because tackling gender-based violence is a priority for my component, for my colleagues, for the work we have been doing for the past 7 years in other regional programs in Latin America, like Eurosocial. And we would like to launch a really action line and close work with all the Ministry of Women, Latin America, and of course, that are all that we already know, but also much more deeply with the Caribbean, because we are aware that you have really main challenges there that are amplified with all the climate change things right away. Right now, I send you a greeting from Sevilla, where I'm participating in the Financing to Development conference, international conference, and we are at 44 degrees Celsius. So climate change is impacting also in Europe, but you are in the Caribbean, one of the main I don't know how to say it, victims of the climate change catastrophes, for example, that you are going to live, that you have been living the past few years, but you are living from now. And we will have to link this work on how to be adaptive and how to be resilient to climate changes with all the work that you have been doing also in tackling gender-based violence. So we are trying to set up a working group with MESEGVI about all the main needs of the Caribbean countries on this topic of gender-based violence. And we are going to link it with all the natural disasters and climate change challenges. So we have been working already with some countries like Cuba, or mainly, for example, Dominican Republic, that are in the region of the Caribbean. But we will like to create this working group with you, for you, and we are not going to give you lessons of how to tackle gender-based violence. We do not dare that, of course not. We will try also to learn how are the main important actions that you are taking in place in regarding your own national context. Also, another line of action that we are trying to set up, it's about protective social protection, adaptive social protection. So we have been working with already in economic empowerment, women's economic empowerment in the Caribbean, and try to support the Ministry of Women on this work. Finally, which is also really important, that with the Caribbean initiative, we are trying to work on sargassum, all the impact that sargassum is having on the living conditions of all the women and the people around the coastlines. So we are trying to set up also a study group. So we are really willing to work with you, for you, and to learn from what are the main and innovative experiences that you have been developing in your countries in the Sub-Caribbean, and to really link Latin America from the continent with the Caribbean and with Europe. We are really willing to do that. Thank you for the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to all this discussion, and I wish you an excellent journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to Mr. Science, and thank you for your participation and all of your efforts in this initiative. Next, I have the honor of inviting Senator Honorable Gloria Thomas, Minister for Social and Community Development, Housing and Gender Affairs, to offer her official remarks on this two-day sub-regional consultation. Senator Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Mr. Finley Jeffrey, Permanent Secretary with responsibility for community development and housing in the Ministry of Social and Community Development, Housing and Gender Affairs. Other permanent secretaries present, Mr. Victor Clark, British High Commissioner to Grenada, Ms. Luz Patricia Guerrero, Technical Secretary of MISECV and other MISECV experts, Mr. Alfonso Martinez, Head of the Gender and Social Rights component of the EU Program Inclusive Societies, Ms. Rosalie Lagrenade, OAS Grenada Office, other representatives from the Diplomatic Corps, other senior government officials, staff of the Ministry of Social and Community Development, Housing and Gender Affairs, specially invited guests in person and online, members of the media, and online viewers. Pleasant good morning, everyone. On behalf of the Government of Grenada and the Ministry of Social and Community Development, Housing and Gender Affairs, I am indeed honored to welcome you to this historic sub-regional consultation on the development of an inter-American law to prevent, punish, and eradicate digital gender-based violence against women. Grenada is proud to host this milestone event, the first of its kind in the English-speaking Caribbean. It marks a critical step in our shared efforts to align legislation, strengthen national capacities, and uphold the rights and dignity of women and girls across all spaces, including the digital realm. We come together today united by a common purpose. While the Caribbean is rich in cultural diversity, we face shared challenges when it comes to digital gender-based violence. Online abuse, cyber stalking, image-based violence, and hate speech disproportionately target women and girls, threatening their safety, freedom of expression, and ability to participate in public life. As a small island developing state, we understand the value of collaboration. No single nation can confront these issues alone. Progress depends on shared learning, collective action, and coordinated advocacy. This consultation is not just Grenada's. It's a regional forum to shape a hemispheric legal framework grounded in our realities, values, and ambitions. We thank the Technical Secretariat and the Inter-American Commission of Women for your leadership and for ensuring that Caribbean voices are central to this process, not just included, but foundational. Let us use this opportunity to reflect, strategize, and co-create legal and policy solutions that are practical, inclusive, and transformation. And let's strengthen the partnership across governments, civil society, academia, and regional institutions. that are essential for achieving justice and digital safety for all. Together, we can turn the digital world from a source of harm into a space of safety, dignity, and empowerment for every woman and girl in our region. Thank you, and I wish a productive and inspiring consultation. I had to be short because I have to run out to the Senate, but I'll be back during the course of the day. Okay.
Thank you very much, Minister. And thank you again for being here with us, gracing us with your presence in such an important initiative. Again, unity comes up, reminding us that collaboration is key. Together, we're stronger. We now have a photo op with the delegates. Okay, so we'll like all the delegates to come to the front for the photo op. And we now have a musical piece by Mr. Skit again. So all the delegates, can you join us at the front for a photo op? Thank you very much. Thank you very much, delegates. Let us now transition into a moment of artistic reflection. Please enjoy this cultural performance, again by Mr. Skeet, following which we'll have a 5-minute break. Thank you very much, Mr. Skate. To our online viewers, we will be taking a 5-minute break. We will resume after the break. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We're ready to resume. Before we proceed to our first panel discussion, we pause for a moment of recognition and gratitude. It is important that we take time to honor those whose leadership and service have shaped Grenada's contributions to the inter-American community's ongoing efforts to combat violence against women. Before I invite Permanent Secretary Finley Jeffrey to assist in this recognition, we invite Ms. Patricia Maia, Technical Secretary of MISECV, to give some remarks on the MISECV experts.
Good morning, everyone. Well, I have to say that I am really, really happy to be here. We are grateful with you to invite us. We are grateful to be close to Grenada. We are grateful to be enjoying this important topic with your wisdom and knowledge, learning from you. I'm very happy this morning when I read Advancing Social Justice, Promoting Peace and Championing Inequality. It really moved my heart because that's what we try to do all over the region. And to having you here and to have the opportunity to see this beautiful country and enjoy this wonderful rhythm. I was sitting this morning that all my body shake with emotion because it is really a wonderful and warm welcome, and I feel that way. So, and also it's a privilege, you know, to work in such a beautiful places. We have a great opportunity, and also because transitions, which is what we are gonna do now, are important moments for the people who is telling us that we're going to continue from another place, and also for the people that is coming in a different way, but it's coming, no? I would like to express our heartfelt thanks of appreciation to Francine Foster. I really would like to everybody make a huge applause to Francine. Who for long served as a SEBI expert for Grenada. Francine, where is Francine? Francine, I was talking about you and you were here. So, a huge applause from Francine. Francine has been in the SEBI, I don't know, for about 12 years at least. And since I came as a technical secretariat, Francis was there, and always she was advocating for the rights of women in the Caribbean, a strong advocating, and she carried out a role of clarity, purpose, and grace, and where gratefulness was part of her legacy. So thank you so much for joining us all this time. At the same time, it is a pleasure to welcome Mrs. Helene McQueen as a Grenada expert. I want to say that Helene has been with us as an expert, as an authority, and always around. I have to say that we are really happy to have her now as an expert. In many ways, it's a homecoming, as I said before, because she served as a national competent authority probably about 6 years ago, I think, or 6, 10, more than that. I don't know. I've been in between Francine and Helene. But I have to say that in the same way, we are in the transition from violence against women offline to this new violence, no? This new violence that we are still, the minister this morning was talking about only one picture, our vice president was saying, only one sound. And it can change the life of a person, but also a community. So in this transition from the online, offline violence, which is the one that we, for 30 years, because actually it's 31 years that the time that the Inter-American Convention to punish, eradicate, and in English I miss up, prevent, punish, and eradicate violence against women, we have learned a lot. We have been, learning all the complexity of this violence against women incorporate in our life, because it's not only what is happening in our houses, but it's what is happening in our school, in our work, in our society, but now spread in this new place that is the online life, where everyone here enjoy for sure, and that should be something for the good and benefit of everyone. But we know that women and girls are particularly vulnerable. And with all the challenges that we still have in violence against women, now we have these new challenges in this space that we don't know. We don't know what to do. We don't know to who call when something like this happens. Should I go to the police? Should I write down to Twitter, to TikTok, to Instagram? Should I tell somebody? Should I keep quiet? What should I do? And that's the idea of this transition moment also. We have to learn, everybody who is here, including me, we have to learn a lot. And I'm gonna do an invitation also to do something like this with kids and teenagers, because they are today the ones that can teach us, because they are living in that world right now. And we really have to learn from them. So I remember like telling my daughter, explain me how to do this and how to do that, in the same way that I used to explain her how to read or how to do math. Now they are in another position. And probably we have to learn so much about what they are doing now. So in all these transitions, I want to remark the importance of this work and the support of this country to the MESECVI. Thank you so much again. And Francine, I know that you are gonna be around us. And I know that Elaine, you're gonna continue with us, working together to work for Grenada, work also for the Caribbean region, and also bring all that you know also for Latin America. Thank you so much again.
Thank you very much to our Technical Secretary for your remarks. At this time, I invite Mr. Finley Jeffrey, Permanent Secretary, to assist us with recognition. Today, the ministry is both honoring its last MESECVI expert, who served in 2012, and is appointing its new MESECVI expert. Her Honor, Chief Magistrate Francine Foster has served as Grenada's MESECVI expert with distinction and purpose. She holds a Bachelor of Laws degree from the esteemed Hugh Wooden Law School and brings to her current post as Acting Chief Magistrate a wealth of legal expertise. With over a decade of dedicated service in various capacities within the legal system, she has been a consistent advocate for justice, fairness, and equity. In her role as MESECVI expert, Chief Magistrate Foster represented Grenada with professionalism and passion, contributing to vital discussions on law reform, gender justice, and state accountability. Her insights have helped to inform the region's understanding of the legal, social, and structural challenges that women and girls face in seeking protection from violence. Today, the ministry proudly acknowledges her contributions, not only as a jurist, but as a staunch ally in the pursuit of human rights and gender equality. Her advocacy has amplified Grenada's voice in global dialogue on violence against women, in keeping with the spirit and principles of the Belém do Pará Convention. We now have a photo opportunity as the token will be handed over to Justice Francine. Thank you, Her Honor, Chief Magistrate Foster, for your exemplary service and for being a steadfast voice for women and girls across Grenada and the wider region. The ministry is also pleased to announce the appointment of Mrs. Elaine Henry McQueen as Grenada's new expert to MISECV. Mrs. Henry McQueen is a seasoned gender equality advocate and program management professional with over 30 years of experience. Her work has spanned education, civil society, trade unionism, and public service. She has served in key leadership roles in several organizations, including the Grenada Union of Teachers, Grenada National Organization of Women, Caribbean Women's Association, and the ministry's own division of Gender and Family Affairs. She has been instrumental in national and regional reporting on gender justice, including her leadership in preparing Grenada's CEDAW report and previous service as MISECV expert and component national authority. Most recently, she coordinated the Grenada Spotlight Initiative to end violence against women and girls under the UN system. We are confident that her rich expertise and steadfast dedication to women's rights will continue to benefit Grenada and the broader region. I now invite Permanent Secretary, Mr. Finley Jeffrey, to present Mrs. Henry McQueen with a formal appointment letter. We also invite Ms. Patricia Maia for a photo op. Can Ms. Foster join in for a photo op as well? P.S. Ms. Maia. Yes. Congratulations, Mrs. Henry McQueen. Thank you for once again answering the call to serve, for your continued leadership in the pursuit of gender justice. Thank you to our honorees, PS Justice and Technical Secretary. We now shift into a critical discussion exploring the theme, Digital Gender-Based Violence Against Women in the Caribbean, Challenges and Strategic Opportunities. This session will be moderated by Ms. Yasmin Odlum, Specialist and Regional Coordinator for the Caribbean Inter-American Commission of Women. Ms. Odlum will introduce the local panelists and commentators for the panel. The panelists will be Mrs. Elaine McQueen, Henry McQueen, the CV expert Grenada, Mr. Jovis Dabro, Detective Constable Nilan Finley, and Ms. Shona Benjamin. We'll also like the commentators to join us at the front. That will be Mr. Hassani McDonald, Ms. Connor Husbands, Ms. Renette Jacoto, and Ms. Miriam Roche. Ms. Renette is not here, so Mr. Sanders will join us.
Good day, everyone. I have the pleasure of being your moderator today. I am Yasmin Odlum, as you saw earlier, and I actually, little fact, I was St. Lucia's first expert to the Masecvi, and I worked along with Francine Foster. So it is indeed a pleasure to be here in this wonderful country and to receive your hospitality. And today we are impaneled to have a dialogue on digital gender-based violence against women in the Caribbean, looking at the challenges and the strategic opportunities. And I am joined here by 7 esteemed authorities and experts in their respective fields, whom I'll later introduce. The Masecvi, as you have heard today, has shown an unrelenting commitment to substantively and equitably highlight the Caribbean's perspective in all of its work, as evidenced in the first Masecvi National Consultation on our draft model law on digital gender-based violence against women. And this is the latest flagship of the Masecvi in which it has worked in the last 2 years. Another fact, we held the first Masecvi meeting in the Caribbean here in Grenada in 2014. It was a sub-regional meeting, and Miriam Roach, SEVI expert of St. Vincent, was there with us. I think you're the only one, apart from myself, who was at that meeting. And of course, the new SEVI expert, Elaine Henry McQueen. She was our partner in this. So we are among family here. And the process of concretizing the work on digital gender-based violence and the drafting of this comprehensive inter-American model law to prevent, punish, and eradicate technology-facilitated violence against women, that one always gives me a little tongue twister. This work began in 2023 after being mandated at both the technical level of the 19th meeting of the SEVI Committee of Experts and also being politically mandated through the 9th Conference of States Party to the convention. Ah dear, sorry, I jumped a little bit. Yeah. Which also called for developing tools to ensure that the model law would have regional regulation. By December 2023, the first working meeting with over 80 regional international specialists began the process of a preliminary draft model, and this continued into 2024. Following this, an experts working group of 9 member states was established. That was in September 2024. And would you believe it? This specialized group, how many people did I say were on that group? 9. 5 were from the Caribbean. So the Caribbean has had foundational work in establishing the consultations and the direction of this inter-American model law. So the experts came from the Bahamas, Jamaica, Suriname. She couldn't be with us here today. She missed her flight, unfortunately. She missed her connection, so she couldn't be here with us. And St. Vincent and the Grenadines, ubiquitously with us at all times. Please give a round of applause to Miss Miriam Roach. She's one of the longest standing members of the MSECVI from Sister Islands, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And Trinidad and Tobago, Ms. Sherna Benjamin, Vice President, was also very instrumental in that. So, October 24 to June 2025, 9 consultations have been held on this model law with over 150 specialists. So a lot of work has gone into this. And today we are here. July 1st, new month, new consultation in the Caribbean, history making. And this model law has included input from civil society, women's organizations, academia, think tanks, and international organizations. Okay. You've heard an overview of the situation in the Caribbean, so I'll just sort of run through it and tell you that UN Women has defined this type of violence against women as, and I quote, any act that is committed, assisted, aggravated, or amplified by the use of information communication technologies or other digital tools, which results in or is likely to result in physical, sexual, psychological, social, political, or economic harm, or other infringements of the rights and freedoms of women and girls. And we know that women and girls are disproportionately affected by this type of violence. And this is what we want to keep stressing here with this law. The gender-based nature is important in consideration of cyber violence. It has to be gender-based, okay? And we heard the Permanent Secretary speak this morning. That story was so moving about the one photograph that destroyed a life, okay? And that was in the Caribbean here. So, what are some of the data on the global front? According to a 51-country study conducted by the Economist Intelligence Unit, the overall prevalence of online violence against women globally is 85%. That's at the global level, okay? Latin America and the Caribbean have a 91% online violence prevalence rate. That is high, 91%. And basically, in this global study, we have the highest rate of that type of violence against women after the Middle East. Can you believe that? After the Middle East, which has a 98% prevalence rate. Further, a UNESCO 2024 study on the Caribbean that targeted women from the region revealed that 67% of Caribbean women had experienced or knew someone affected by technology-facilitated violence. I reiterate, 67%. Recent study, December 2024. And this includes online harassment and cyberbullying. Okay, so you will say, so what do the legislative frameworks look like in the Caribbean? A recent UN study again on the Caribbean, the Americas and the Commonwealth, observed that, and I quote, the existing legal frameworks in the Caribbean often fail to address the unique aspects of technology-facilitated gender-based violence. General laws exist, and while that is commendable in the countries that were in this study, it was about, I think I saw about at least 6 to 8 Caribbean countries, the specific nature of online violence is not adequately covered by the law, and that with the existing legislation, there is limited scope of application to adequately protect and support women. That's why we're here today. That's why we're here. So, while the current legal frameworks in the Caribbean may criminalize some forms of cyber violence or provide civil remedies, there are significant gaps in many of the jurisdictions which are not significantly or sufficiently, rather, robust to address cyber violence. Our expert session will dialogue on the various legal scenarios in the Caribbean. This is our hope, this is our aspirational thinking, and to what extent this new legal instrument that we are bringing here today, that all of you will look into and add comment on to help us develop an instrument that fits the specificities of the Caribbean. So, our authorities are here today to discuss the topic at hand, and I reiterate the topic, the challenges and opportunities in dealing with online, digital, gender-based violence against women in the Caribbean. The law has more heading than anything. And in the interest of time, the bios will be posted online for your viewing using the QR code provided. But who are our esteemed panelists? I have, as the second lady here, Ms. Shirna Benjamin, Vice President of SEVI and expert of Trinidad and Tobago. I also have Ms. Elaine Henry McQueen. Congratulations on your new appointment. Good seeing you again, girl. The new SEVI expert of Grenada. And let me pause to, again, acknowledge, thank you for your work, Ms. Foster. Thank you so much. And I have Mr. Jervis Dabrio, coordinator of Grenada's National Cybersecurity Incident Response Team, and Detective Constable Neelan Findley, Digital Forensic Examiner. He's not here? I said that. I said, no, I said Neelan. The Londoners may be silent. Neelan. Thank you. Now, if he takes that accuracy into the work he's going to do to protect women against digital violence, we have a good partner. And let me take this time also to introduce our 4 commentators. I've already mentioned her. We have Miss Miriam Roach, SEVI expert of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Show them who you are. Raise your hand. All right. Dr. Kona Husbands. She is indeed a violence specialist and the SEVI expert of Guyana. Dr. Husbands, thank you for being here with us. Mr. Hassani McDonald, SEVI expert of St. Kitts and Nevis. So the Leeward Islands are represented today. And they are amply represented as well because we have Mr. Jamie Saunders. Now, he is the only one of his kind here because he's actually a national competent authority in the process. So we have experts and we have national authorities, and he's from Antigua and Barbuda. So, time to begin. Icebreaker questions. And I'll start with the panelist. Briefly state your professional expertise in dealing with gender-based violence, violence against women. And I think that I will start with the gentleman, Mr. Finley. You gave me enough trouble, so go ahead.
Okay. Pleasant morning once again to everyone. And I must say it's a pleasure of being here. Okay, so my role and function as a digital forensics examiner, which I'm attached to the Digital Forensics Unit, Criminal Investigation Department, is simply to provide support, right, in my expertise in obtaining digital, from whenever the request is made from the investigators. And yes, we have seen over the past few years, in my field, not mostly of the physical aspect as of domestic violence, as was alluded earlier, but also the digital platform. So we see the violation of privacy, which we have conducted lots of investigation on that area, and also the child pornography. So these are some investigations that we conduct in help to protecting women against the issue at hand. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Finley. Thank you. And I will now go on to Ms. Benjamin. Your professional expertise in dealing with violence against women.
Okay, so firstly, my expertise comes from my personal experience. First of all, my personal experience of being an intentionally progressive thriving survivor of severe childhood and adolescent and young adult abuse. That's where my expertise comes from first. And secondly, my expertise comes from my area of discipline as a macro and global practice social worker and organizational and development systems change specialist.
So much, and I want to acknowledge the courage it takes to come into a forum and admit that you're a survivor. Thank you very much for sharing that. And the next gentleman, the one to my immediate left, Mr. Mr. Jervis, yes. Would you do the same and briefly share your professional expertise in dealing with this?
So I'm the guy they call when they have no idea who to call.
Great answer.
But I think most important is the fact that I'm also a parent, and I have 2 daughters, no sons. So this is something that is dear to my heart because I see what happens in different spaces when the technology is used against our people, especially the young ladies among us, yeah? As the coordinator of the National Cybersecurity Incident Response Team, I provide a level of guidance for those who are affected, just letting them know who they need to speak with, what they need to do, whether they need to consult a lawyer, CID, speak with Finley and his team. But, that's why I say I'm the one they call when they have no idea who to call. And then I have to find a way of offloading all that baggage.
Thank you very kindly. And we do need a lot more men supporting us in these efforts. So thank you very much. At least we know we have 2 advocates already. Okay, Mr. Finley? Okay, all right. Okay, and lastly, I give it to our newest recycled
It's
person.
good to be back. It's good to be back as an expert. Thank you so very much for the warm welcome and for having me here today. Good morning, everyone. I come to this remembering whilst I was president of GNOW and we were discussing issues of sexual harassment and so on, and it was around that time we learned of a woman from Dominica whose image was manipulated and shared. And it became a regional story which we examined and so on, though we did not, as an organization, really do anything about it at the time. But we tried to get it, some aspects of it included within what was then proposed sexual harassment legislation. Since then, a number of stories have been coming of children, school children, whose images, personal images, and so on have been circulating locally. And the social response really has been that these girls are horrible, despicable people, so immoral. We had not had a conversation around the boys and men who were often in the photographs or the videos with them, or the people who took the photographs or videos, or the people who circulated them. And the story from Mr. Jeffrey this morning highlighted the fact. So we only seek to continually oppress women and girls. So I come to this from that perspective of what can we do to dismantle patriarchy, to remove the oppressions against women and girls? What can we do partly to ensure that the offenders are held accountable, but also what can we do to ensure that even if a picture of a nude female body goes out on the media, with or without her knowledge, it is not a defining moment in her life, something that would destroy her life or her career or her promotion, etc. Because the world would begin to accept that women and girls do have bodies, beautiful bodies, and we do not have to treat our bodies and our sexuality as things to be hidden and to feel so ashamed about, and that the society should not feel that it has to punish us for having the bodies and lives, including our sexuality, that we do have. So my perspective on it is, of course, dealing with the perpetrators and the offenders and the harm, but it's also about preventing the continuation of oppression and patriarchy.
Thank you very much. And I applaud your passion to the issue. Okay, we have finished the discussion. You can go home now. You've heard everything you need. And that was just the icebreaker, you know? So, I will start with Ms. Benjamin, because she can speak to, and Alexander Benjamin, she can speak to this situation in Trinidad. And has your country regulated digital gender-based violence against women in any way through legislation and or policy?
Presently, no. And this is something that not only myself, but many other women in Trinidad and Tobago continues to advocate for. We have many instances where women, pictures, videos were taken by once men who said, "I love you," and then when love turns sour, you find them shown all over the internet. And one of the things that brought that to light was one of our minister, present now, At the time, she was running for mayor. And when she won, her then boyfriend shared all her nudes online in a way to shame and disgrace her. And she took that moment not to hide. Yes, she was hurt, and with the backing of women advocates, to address the issue in a proactive way, not denying that she didn't take the photo, but addressing how complicated and nuanced such a situation is, but also when trust is broken by someone who said, I love you.
Thank you very much for that, and thank you for being respectful of keeping the interventions within a minute or two. It allows us to flow a little better. Now, for Grenada, I'm going to actually depart and ask the gentleman here to my right, Mr. Jervis, the same question. Has your country regulated digital gender-based violence against women, or are there policies that you are aware of in your line of work? And then I will turn the question on to the other gentleman from Grenada, and then you can answer, Mrs. Henry McQueen.
We have legislation here, but there are serious gaps. So what was described just now, that is violation of privacy. And several individuals here in Grenada, they have been prosecuted for that crime. We saw an increase in that a few years ago, but it has since died down a little bit because the fines have not been small. And based on what I have seen, since the first person was fined $35,000, no one has been fined that figure again. I think we're at $50,000 now. And I would imagine whoever is silly enough to perpetrate such a crime would be hit with maybe $75,000. And that is how it is going. But we do have some gaps. And, P.S. Finley shared the story, and there are many that I can share from the National CSOT, including a young lady who did not want to have anything to do with anybody because her picture as a teenager was taken and it was manipulated. So she appeared naked in the picture, a picture that wasn't real. And instead of addressing the issue, I spent quite a bit of time explaining to her mother, please do not victimize the victim, because that is ultimately what was being done. She was, told you should not have been there, you should not have done this, and it keep coming back to listen. This is not the picture that she shared. She didn't share this. So we do have some gaps, and I think we'll get into that a little later. Yeah.
Yes, thanks again. So as my good colleague here just alluded, so the legislation that we have in place is the ECA, which is the Electronic Crimes Act, which was enacted 23 of 2013, and under the sections 10 and 12, that these are the legislation that we have in dealing with to assist with the digital aspect, which is the violation of privacy and the child pornography. Yes, which we have seen an increase. And most of these stem from, I would say, when relationship fail. In terms of man and woman in relationship, things turn sour. So what is more what you call a revenge porn, right? So the male figure will decide, okay, that is some attack now, that he will take onto the female and decide to post some of the explicit content. Also, we have the cybercrime, the Budapest Convention. And under Article 9, it specifically deals with child pornography. And good to say that Grenada has become part of the party of April of last year. Also, we have the Domestic Violence Act, and also under law enforcement, there is a section in our standing orders that deals with that aspect of it also. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Mrs. Henry McQueen, could you give us a little bit more of the policy aspect of what's happening in Grenada? Thank you.
Right, yes, I will. In terms of recent developments, I was pleased to be part of the Spotlight Initiative, and one of the things we did is to look at gaps in legislation as it relates to gender-based violence, and found, of course, that there was no specific provisions within the existing legislation that spoke to gender-based violence, digital gender-based violence. And we assisted the government of Grenada to consider and draft legislation around strengthening the Domestic Violence Act to include a provision about digital violence, so that the other protections like protection order and so can be applied in the case of intimate partner violence and in the case of other domestic relationships. So it is my understanding that the government has considered the policy relating to that law and has approved it, and that the government is also has also considered strengthening policy around victims' rights, that is, victims of all forms of gender-based violence, so that it should strengthen the police, the justice system, the social service sector, and the health sector in working together to ensure that their services are survivor-friendly and progressive, considering the human rights of the survivor and, well, all victims and survivors. So this is the policy direction that I understand the government has at this time, given from the last work I did and into recent time. That, and even the Prime Minister was speaking about that recently, and it came up on the news last night, strengthening legislation around dealing with domestic violence was part of his recent engagement, public engagement. And so we are looking forward to this, and of course, hoping to support the process of not just talking about the legislation, but enacting it, and also then implementing it, because that's where a big gap has been sometimes. You have the legislation, you have the policy, but they're not always implemented sufficiently. And part of it is that we do not always educate the public sufficiently, so they do not know what they can, in fact, act on.
Thank you very much for that. I would like to just switch to our survey experts here. And they would sort of help us have more of a regional perspective on this. And I would like to start off with Mr. Saunders asking, would you share one or two examples of working to address digital gender-based violence against women in your country, and specifically in your capacity? Mike, please.
Hi, good morning. Thanks, Ms. Adlam. Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Jamie Saunders. I'm the Competent National Authority and the Director of the Gender Bureau in Antigua and Barbuda. Part of what the Directorate of Gender Affairs does is we operate a support and referral center, which is a one-stop mechanism where persons can access medical, legal, and psychosocial services from one convenient location, which is within our office, from a multi-sectoral trained sexual assault response team. And I can give an example of what that looks like in practice. Last week, a lady would have come in. She's been married for about 15 years. She was in an abusive relationship. It was never physically abusive, but she experienced a lot of other forms, emotional, psychological. She took a job in Anguilla to try and escape the relationship. But she came into the center to say that her husband had hacked her email, her social media accounts, and he would have found out and canceled the flight that she would have had booked. He would have gone on her email and responded to the place where she took the job. This is a high-ranking person within a medical institution in Antigua. He would have hacked into her email and told the government of Anguilla she's not taking the position, took all of her passport, everything like that. And so she would have initially gone to the police, and they were essentially saying it wasn't a crime. I don't know if it's a lack of training on their part or a lack of understanding of the legislation, but that type of thing is something that we see in terms of a lack of awareness. And through the Special Victim Support Unit, which is a part of the Support and Referral Center, they deal specifically with gender-based violence, we were able to actually engage with the police officers who would have basically failed the lady and, explain to them our Electronic Crimes Act, that encompasses that, the Domestic Violence Act, which speaks to cyber violence as well. And thankfully, we were able to restore her access to all of the accounts, because in our Electronic Crimes Act, identity theft and protection of data and passwords are all enshrined within the legislation. So he was convicted, she was granted a protection order against him, but it just goes to show a couple of dynamics. One, their lack of awareness. Two, the importance of training from our key service providers. And three, how our legislation, different legislation, can be cross-cutting and cohesive in order to facilitate justice. And it also shows that although things like revenge porn is an important aspect of it, there's also more subtle forms of digital violence, such as that identity theft, persons accessing your digital information. And it's very important for people to understand that so we can be proactive and preemptive, both as individuals and as institutions, to ensure we have an environment conducive to preventing things like that from happening.
Thank you very kindly, Mr. Saunders. That was really a good response. I will ask Ms. Roach if you would be so kind as to give us an example or two of working to address digitally based violence against women in your country, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, if you have any such legislation or policies.
Good morning, everyone. Miriam Roach from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We have been speaking all morning about transitioning. Well, I am one person transitioning from the then to now. And what I've realized is that when we make legislations, they are always neutral. They are never specific to women's needs. And so while St. Vincent and the Grenadines does have an Electronic Crimes Act, it is not specific to women. It does not have provisions specific to violence against women. Interestingly, the first public event was a woman who was speaking online about her specific circumstances on her job. She was a teacher, and that affected the Minister of Education and the politicians. The result of that is that she was terminated without pay, well, not terminated, put on probation without pay for a very long time while they investigated. At present, she's still without a job. So here we are discussing digital violence against women. But in my country, the first person to suffer the consequence of the presence of a law was a woman, because she was brave enough to challenge the authority. This was politicized, and she was a victim of the same act that you were hoping would protect her. Now, what do? I am no longer in the system, but I am a CV expert, and I have a responsibility to advocate for women's rights. So now that we have this model law, I've taken it upon myself to circulate to the Attorney General's office and the CNAs, the Gender Bureau, for comments, so that they could feed the information to me and that I could bring it to discussion at the table. To date, I have not received a single comment. The intention was to have the voice of the attorney. I was hoping that I could be a champion for this law in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and that I was using these 2 entry points to get a response. And the response is nil. It tells me the kind of difficulty we are going to have. And why I am passionate about this is that the same response was given for the femicide model law. The Caribbean countries are yet to respond to that law. So where I am sitting, I am nervous about the responses. And that is why today's activity would help us. And I hope Grenada will help us champion this law and to ensure that there's greater voice for women throughout the Caribbean country. Very nervous about it from where I stand. Thank you.
For that response. Dr. Husbands, I actually am going to give you a slightly different question, but if you want to answer the first one, you can as well. My question to you would be, does your country have the necessary legislative and policy frameworks to handle this type of violence? And you can also share 1 or 2 examples of working to address it as well. So I gave you a compound question.
All right, morning, everybody. Thank you for having me here. Morning. Just to address it, because I was listening to Miriam here, and we have the total opposite in Guyana. So the Attorney General is actually on board with because we did share the legislation with him, the draft model law, and he made comments. So the thing is, we actually have, like most countries in the Caribbean, we have a Cybercrime Act, which governs most of the activities online and so forth. But as Miriam said, it's not specific to violence against women and girls. But there's a section in the Act that there's a section in the Act that states that if there is a crime committed utilizing digital means, like if there's a DV crime committed, if there's a sexual assault committed, then in the Act it speaks to that person being fined 4 times the amount in that Act. So we did try to address, okay, if it's a crime digitally hypothesized or carried out using a digital means, then they can be fined in any other act. So that would give the person some amount of satisfaction in terms of what they can get if they do make a report. And we're seeing that. But we're not seeing it at the level where we would like to see it. So this model law, actually, when we did present it to the Attorney General's chambers, they reviewed it, they submitted their comments. But what the AG said himself is that he would love to take it on as a policy to guide the way of the country and to sort, because it would be difficult, because we're actually in the process of refining. I'm speaking we because I work in the government. Right. I had the gender-based violence unit at the ministry, so I have that capacity as well. So I do deal with gender-based violence directly. So when I say we, I mean that we are working towards incorporating it as a policy and to taking certain components, because one of the things, I mean, I'm probably jumping ahead, but one of the things that he did mention that he loves about this model law is the AI component that we're not seeing in other legislations, right? So, and one example I want to give, because it's very, very recent, it's how persons are using digital space to kind of craft their own stories. So we have a survivor that we rescued from her perpetrator. It was a whole sting operation, got the police involved, moved her out discreetly and put her in a safe space. And the perpetrator is a known criminal in the country. So what he did is that he collaborated with a quote-unquote influencer on social media and crafted an entire different story, saying that his daughter is kidnapped and he needs to find her and the government is holding her. And so he has live going to the different organizations. And you can see how the following, where people are following, it's live and commenting, and they're creating a whole different narrative from what it really is. Now the woman is at risk, the child is at risk, right? And so many others who are commenting, and then you don't know who's listening and feeding him information. Because he's getting, you know how these things are on social media. Oh, I know this person, oh, I know them. And then you're gonna call and comment, and so putting that person at risk. We see the use of the digital space to kind of create an entire violent situation, right? So that's my example. So we are working with the police, we are working with the influencer to try to give them the correct story, because they're being fed the wrong story, all because the perpetrator is just trying to get back at the woman for leaving. And that's a point that we have to understand as well. Sometimes we're talking about revenge porn and stuff, but just the issue of this, they're unable to be in control, that they can't find means and methods to get back at the survivors. So thank you.
For that. And last with our commentators, and then I swing back here because we're trying to have as diverse a set of perspectives as possible. And I'm trying to be a little more nimble with it. So, Mr. McDonald, same question for you. And the question was, you can identify an example, but also speak to the legislative and policy situation in your country of St. Kitts and Nevis. Let's see what the Leewards is doing from your perspective. Thanks.
Okay, so good morning again, everyone. Hassani Manala from St. Kitts and Nevis. As it relates to my work, specifically as a SEVI expert, that is minimal, as I was recently appointed, but I can share items as to why I think I was considered. I am beyond a SEVI expert. I am an attorney at law, and I also currently serve as the president of the National Youth Parliament Association. So within my roles as Youth Parliament, we would have advocated for the involvement and the awareness of sexual harassment in the workplace. And as an attorney, I would have also done pro bono cases for domestic violence victims. A lot of times, persons who find themselves in these situations, they are financially abused, and the men sometimes hold financial resources from these persons, and so even if they try to seek legal advice, they are prevented in that aspect. And so I would have been able to champion the cause as it relates to that, knowing the knowledge that I have, based on the knowledge that I have and my involvement as an attorney. As it relates to the institutions within and the legislative policy framework within St. Kitts and Nevis, we have the Domestic Violence Act that has been recently amended, and it has expanded the definition of domestic violence. So no longer it's just the bare physical attacks, but it encompasses the emotional, the psychological, the sexual, the financial abuse. It's extensive now in its capacity, but of course there are still lingering gaps that needs to be addressed as it relates to the electronic and the digital aspect of things. As it also relates to the unlawful electronic, well, the Electronic Crimes Act, there's the Unlawful Communications Act, but again, that still has its own gaps in that there was a recent case where there were nude photos disseminated by other young lady in St. Kitts and Nevis. She alleged to have been her boyfriend, and there was a charge. The boyfriend in the investigation then mentioned that it was another person that he was dealing with. That person was charged, and in the prosecution of the case, there were severe gaps as it relates to the investigation process, and they were not able to pin it directly onto the person that was charged. And so there is a lot of training, I think, that is necessary and that is needed to really help the police and the authorities as it relates to prosecuting the correct individuals. A lot of times there is no technology, or there is no means of ascertaining what was the chain of where this thing started. And I think placing the onus also on sharers, persons who promulgate and continue to share the information, they should be charged as well, so that if you get a photo, you don't feel obligated to share it thereafter. And so that is some of the gaps that I recognize. And just as it relates to the victim aspect, of course, you reach the court, you're thinking that somebody is going to get charged for this. There will be an example, they will set an example so that other persons don't want to participate in this. And here you have a dismissal of the case, and the victim was distraught in court, and no justice, no one to attach it to. And so as it relates to that, just knowing that there are legislation, there is a start, but there is so much more that we can do as a region, and this is a very good step towards that direction.
Response. I appreciate it very much. So as I swing back to my panelists here, we're hearing capacity building and training, awareness and outreach. We're hearing also accountability for those not only who perpetrate, but also share the information. We're hearing also the need for infrastructural development to be able to handle what the coming laws in cases are indicating need to be done, but we may not have the institutional or the infrastructural capacity to deal with it. So, what are we dealing with? Let me swing it back to the panelists here. And I'm going to start with you, Mr. Jervis, because you were saying some very interesting things here. What are the primary manifestations of this type of violence that you've witnessed, and in what contexts?
In the month of June, there were 7 reports of cyber stalking. 7 reports came into the National CSIRT. Of the 7, 5 were by women. The section that is supposed to deal with that is Section 16 of the Electronic Crimes Act of Grenada, which was repealed in 2014.
Wow.
So I found myself having to explain to them, listen, crime was committed. This is what you can do, but understand that the section of the law that will directly, or that can directly be used to hold the perpetrator accountable was removed in 2014. And the other section that we could fall back on, Section 6 of the Electronic Crimes Act of Grenada, was repealed in 2014. So when I spoke earlier about gaps in the system, we do have laws that address certain issues, that of the sharing of the videos, revenge porn, and so forth, violation of privacy, the distribution of pornography, if it is a minor, the sharers, those seeking it out, can be prosecuted as well. But when it comes to something that I'm seeing more and more instances of, cyber stalking, and for those of you who do not understand, cyber stalking is, it's a different beast. You see, if you are physically being abused, when you're outside of the shared space, there is a level of safety. With cyber stalking, your phone, anything you do on it can be seen by the perpetrator. They can turn on your microphone, turn on your camera. They can read your messages. They can see who you call. They can make calls pretending to be you, being hundreds of miles away. This is how serious it is. And that section was repealed. Those who are holding the iron feel the heat.
Thank you very much for that response. Before I go to my other panelist, I just want to ask, since you work, Ms. Foster, in the legal area here, can you tell me some of the primary manifestations that have come before your jurisdiction? Will you pass the mic kindly to Ms. Francine Foster for me? I'm always full of surprises.
Good morning, everyone. This really caught me totally by surprise. What do I say? So, the issue of the Electronic Crime Act has come before the Magistrates Court before. Actually, the first matter that came before me, the guy was fined $35,000. And there are a few that are still in the system. What is prevalent is basically the sharing of photos. Relationship has ended, and persons, either out of vengeance, would share private photos that were taken while they would have been in a relationship. And that is the type of matters that I have experienced in my short time of practice in relation to cyber crimes. But the act is not used as it should be, and I do agree there's a lot of need for training and awareness to be given. The issue of evidence is always affected, because if the police are not aware of how to use the act, then the evidence that is brought before the court can be tampered with, so to speak, and it'll affect the outcome of the case. But I think, based on what has been said this morning, there's a lot of need for training and awareness as we go forward with this. So I embrace, and I'm really glad I'm here be part of the model legislation.
You see why you are such an effective SEVI expert, because I could actually just throw a question out to you and you were very prepared with an adequate response. And she started the ball rolling with the $35,000, according to my companion here. So, right now, I will throw the question out to our new expert, Mrs. Henry McQueen. What are the primary manifestations? You can take it broader because you have NGO capacity as well in your background. In the Caribbean, what are you seeing? Help us out.
The broadest space we can take it is that digital gender-based violence fits within the entire gamut of gender-based violence against women and girls. It fits within the belief system that says that men can do whatever it takes to control and exercise power over women and girls, and also that they can exercise power and control over other men and boys too. That this thing about wanting to commit violence, whether it's physically, emotionally, using online spaces or face-to-face, wherever they can, just so that they can exercise that dominance. And also that women and girls accept being dominated, that we accept the violence committed against us, whether it's in any form, because it's part of the system. And we learn that. We also can take it recognizing that women and girls also endorse men's use of violence against other women and girls, because we assist in the shaming and naming of victims and survivors, just as men and boys do. So we have to recognize that if we take it from that broad perspective, it is part of the pattern. It's part of the pattern of behavior. And that is where we have to strike at if we need to also work on prevention. There are some belief systems and myths around women's bodies, which I mentioned before, and privacy and morality and immorality of that women, Carnival is coming, so we'll hear another set of stories. And we need to address that as well. I understand, though, that the model legislation may not necessarily be able to address how to prevent it in that way. But I just want to mention here that that would be an important thing to do, both by the competent national authorities and the civil society organizations that are in the room, the ministries of gender affairs, and all stakeholders, really. When we see it within that pattern, when we see cyber stalking and revenge porn and all of those different manifestations of digital gender-based violence, think of it also as part of that pattern of power and control, the exercise of power and control over women and girls. When a woman is feeling or saying that she doesn't want to take it forward, she doesn't want anybody to know about it, it is part also of that cycle that says that a woman should feel guilty because somebody else committed a crime against her, because our society says to her, you caused it. Why were you there? As that example there, why were you wearing that? Why did you find yourself with such a man that he could? Yeah, it goes that far. So we have to take it. That's how broad I'm asking us to. However, I also want to remind us that the legislation is important, and getting back the cybercrime legislation strengthened, as well as dealing with on the domestic violence and the model legislation, we do need to ensure that there are systems in place for protecting the victims and holding offenders accountable. But we must recognize also that there could be people living in other jurisdictions committing these crimes against victims in Grenada. What happens if somebody lives in St. Vincent or is doing the crime from another part of the world, Dubai, wherever? How do the legislation that we have affect that? What happens and what influence do we have as it relates to the conglomerates, these cyber brothers who manipulate and create those systems and algorithms and so on? We also need to find a way to start talking, even as SIDS, how do we influence that? And, you know, I don't know how, but it is something that I wanted to put on the table. Thank you very much.
You have indeed put a lot on the table here. So, because our host told us that we had, at the time it was about 14 minutes, but I have made it 15. We have 15 minutes left, okay? No, we have 15 minutes. So, I'm just going to throw out the questions, starting with Ms. Benjamin here, Ms. Alexander Benjamin. What key elements would you consider need to be reflected for a Caribbean version of the model law that we have developed at the MSECFI? What key elements should be there to reflect the Caribbean perspective?
Okay, so quickly, 3 points. We heard about the harmonization of laws and so forth earlier on. And when the question was asked if Trinidad and Tobago does have a specific law that deals with digital gender-based violence, the answer to that is no. While there are many different types of legislation, like the Sexual Offences Act, the Cybercrime Bill, and so forth, that weave some aspect of addressing certain types of digital violence against women, what we realize across the region that many of our laws were not drafted through a gender lens. So this balance and women continue to be excluded from that. So to the specific question, one of the aspects I would like to see is this aspect of evidence-based data collection. We are a region that lacks data. Data informs policy, and the information drives decisions. If we're advocating for a particular law, we cannot just go and say, okay, we need this law. What is the data saying about the law, about this particular issue? So that for us is critical in making this more effective within the region as a whole. And I would end with this particular quote here from, I'm studying this book for a research project I'm doing for my thesis. It's called Trauma and Recovery, the Aftermath of Violence from Domestic Abuse to Political Terror. It's written by a leading Harvard medical doctor. It says, in order to escape accountability for his crimes, the perpetrator does everything in his power to promote forgetting. Secrecy and silence are the perpetrator's first line of defense. If secrecy fails, the perpetrator attacks the credibility of his victim. If he cannot silence her absolutely, he tries to make sure that no one listens. To this end, he marshals an impressive array of arguments, from the most blatant denial to the most sophisticated and eloquent rationalization. After every atrocity, one can expect to hear the same predictable apologies. It never happened. The victim lies. The victim exaggerates. The victim brought it upon herself. And in any case, it is time to forget and the past and move on. The more powerful the perpetrator, the greater is his prerogative to name and define reality. And the more completely his arguments prevail. The perpetrator's argument prove irresistible when the bystander faces them in isolation.
Thank you very much for that very potent quote. I'm going to throw it down to the commentators, and I'm going to throw out a question to Mr. Saunders and Mr. McDonald. Question, and then I'm coming to you, Ms. Husbands. Mr. Saunders, what do you foresee as concrete practical challenges to developing a model law for the region?
All right, thank you. One for me is I think we have to speak more about artificial intelligence. I think there's going to be some level of resistance to that. Recently, the University of West Indies Five Islands campus, they held a conference regionally on artificial intelligence, and there was a lot of curiosity, a lot of apprehension, and a lot of just novice disposition on it. And there is so much that this thing encompasses that we have to have this included in any model legislation that we're talking about. Somebody could video what I'm saying right now, and in 1 hour, it would be that completely different. You would think I'm the most misogynistic, hateful person, and it would be very believable. So you have the ability to manipulate reality through artificial intelligence. And so we have to begin to understand that and to also train those who will be interacting with it to understand how it intersects with our legislation and our service provision. I think something else that will just be important, as we've been talking about again, is training. I know in terms of the police, for us, we would train police, those who deal with the gender-based violence crimes, and very quickly they change out and go into another division. So we have to try to find a way to make our training models be more sustainable and to have some kind of monitoring and evaluation frameworks in place so that we can make sure the training is not just theoretical in nature, but it's actually serving our survivors in a very practical way. And just a general point I wanted to make as another form of digital gender-based violence I think is important to look at is in the political arena. I think in Antigua and Barbuda, we just have one woman in the lower house who is the prime minister's wife, and it's a situation where women who want to enter politics, they're subjected to what I think is a very subtle form of digital gender-based violence, whereas the men are being held to account in terms of their perceptions of policy and development. Women are being talked about their boyfriend from 15 years ago and how they dress, and just very demeaning in a way that a man would not be held to account to. So I think that that's one of the areas that we need to look at when talking about digital gender-based violence, as well as that is a barrier to more women entering politics, and more women in politics would lead to more representation, influence on issues like this as well. So thank you.
That's a great point. And we actually had just done some work in the Caribbean on that recently when we had our electoral course for women. We were supposed to come to Antigua, but you know how that goes. Anyway, before I go on, yes, Mr. McDonald, quickly, key elements of the model law which could help the region overcome the challenges.
So there are a number of elements that could be highlighted, but one of the things I think we need to focus on is cross-border cooperation, not just as it relates to knowledge sharing, but in terms of perhaps even relocating some of the victims that suffer, because we are from small and developing states. Everybody know everybody. And I mean, the region is so connected, everybody in the region know everybody as well. But I feel like drawing from the resources from across, even like CARICOM, OECS, that could help us as it relates to combating these crimes and as it relates to helping survivors to move and pick up life somewhere else and help them to get away from that situation that may be stifling them. A lot of times, again, it's the finances that keep women in certain situations that they find themselves in. And so perhaps we need to have an injection of more budgetary allocation to fight issues like these from the government aspect, political will, so that the investment could be seen, persons can benefit from these investments, and not just locally, but regionally, and perhaps even tapping into international support systems. So that's one of the elements that I think we should highlight as it relates to overcoming some of the challenges, and of course, tapping into international support for capacity training and strengthening of the institutions and the agencies that deals with these issues, the police, the law enforcement, legal aid, developing strong legal aid systems, things along that line will help us to really overcome the challenges that we face as it relates to dealing with gender-based violence.
And I know we're running up on time, so we won't have any wrap-up, but I need to at least allow 2 more people to speak here. How can the MSECV collaborate on implementing a model law for the Caribbean? I'm going to give this to you, Ms. Husbands, and I'm going to share the your platform with Ms. Roach. And the last question will definitely go to Mr. Findlay.
Ms. Roach has something she's burning she wants to say. I'll give her the
You see, because you did say that we will all deal with the challenges. I just wanted to name at least 4 areas in which we could, and I will just read them. Technical challenges, I think the magistrate did refer to the fact that there's difficulty with gathering digital evidence. So that would be one of our technical challenges. And we know that throughout the Caribbean, people are at different stages in terms of the use of technology. So there are going to be some technological gaps that we would have to address. Enforcement of the law is always a problem, and that is one of our legal challenges, along with the loopholes that we have been hearing, the number of loopholes, and in particular, Grenada's case, the fact that the powers that be are interfering or even taking away gains that we would have had in our original laws.
Impact on, instead of interfering.
Okay, having a
Thank
sorry.
you.
We know that we make laws and the general populace are generally not au fait or aware of the provisions of the law. And I think that that is one area that we must, so there are the social and the cultural changes that we must address, as well as the institutional challenges, the finances, the staff, and the coordination among our partners. So those were some of the contributions.
Much thank you. You see, that's why you're independent experts. But you know, I need to go through customs tomorrow and immigration. So it's our host country. Yes, Ms. Dr. Husbands.
I would just like to add, I think my colleagues would have covered most of it in terms of how MSECV can work towards supporting the countries with this legislation and this model law. I think what is very important, and it's a Caribbean culture, we're stronger together. So I think a collaborated effort is very, very important. I know Jamie would have mentioned it and Hassani would have mentioned it in terms of other stakeholders. We're talking about government. Yes, it's legislation, but there are many legislations that many of us don't know that government would have passed. So awareness and education is very, very important. And we're talking about the digital space. Maybe we can utilize the space to advocate and increase awareness of the legislation, of the policies, of the draft laws, of everything that we want to get out there, because we're realizing in this century is that the digital space is a very powerful space. It can be harmful, but it can also be of good use as well. So utilizing that platform to get the information out there, get the public's perception and get their buy-in is very, very important, along with our CSOs or NGOs or different judicial arms. And also we have, as I said, just get that collaborated effort from our CARICOM member states and so forth, that we can all work together to advocate for this, because it's affecting all of us. What's affecting Grenada is affecting Guyana. And what's affecting St. Kitts is affecting Antigua. So yes, that's what I have to say.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Finlay, I'm actually going to give you a wild card here. What would you like to say to wrap up all of this for us? And because you come from the perspective of the police, it's very important for us to be. Did I get it correct? Is it? No, it's Mr. Jervis, not Mr. Finlay, right?
He's police.
Okay, good. Okay. He the popo. We got to respect the popo. All right? So, yes, wildcard question. You take it and take us out.
Okay, thanks for your wildcard question. Okay, so first and foremost, I must say that this has been a very, very, very important forum, right? And we must have to first reflect on the hash, but the the truth. And this in this, I'm referring to that of the digital space, right? While it is full of, while it might be a good to some, and also it can impact persons in a harsh manner, in the sense that the internet, we may see it as safe, but in truth and essence, is not really a safe environment for everyone. So, in light, so women and girls, we have seen around the world that they are facing that growing wave of gender-based digital violence, right? It's nothing to hide. It's a form of abuse that is not invisible, but it is deeply, deeply, deeply have this great impact on them. So from the online harassment, the cyber stalking, the revenge pornography, the hate speech, the digital blackmailing, etc. These are simply being, women are simply being targeted by this. And just for simply being that they are just visible and just for being vocal on the online spaces. So this violence it don't only occur behind the scenes, right? What it does that it actually create like silences voices. It could break one confidence. It could also, I've already mentioned several times earlier that it even affects careers deeply, deeply. And most importantly, it can pose a lasting psychological and also physical consequences. So this is not just, in a nutshell, this is not just a woman issue, but also it's a human rights issue, right? And it causes some reflection on the imbalances and the cultural norms which also cause fuel to violence in our physical world, right? So what happens online, whether we believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, it is real. And yes, it matters to us a lot. Yes, it matters to everyone. Law enforcement, everyone has to be part of this. Not just a particular body, but every single being. It matters. So the fight against digital gender based violence, it demands a multi-pronged response, right? If everybody is with me, if everybody agree with me. So in the essence, so we need stronger laws, right? For some from us to begin with. Better enforcement. Platforms, we've been mentioning earlier on, in terms of providing, always educating and providing information out there. And I must allude that on a law enforcement in Grenada, our special victim unit and other departments, they do an excellent job in always being out there, be it on the media, always providing information against the gender-based violence against women. So I must say hats off to them. But most importantly, we need a cultural shift on that challenges, one that will continue to hold perpetrators. And also it empowers women to speak out. Also women to lead. And most importantly, women to live without fear, right? So I urge all of us here in this room, in this gathering, in this forum now, let us commit as individuals, stakeholders, be it communities, law enforcement, institutions, governments, in creating a digital world where women, girls, maybe men to an extent, because yes, everyone is affected, right? To not just to be connected, right? But also to be protected. And in essence, a world, I know that a world where the internet is a tool of freedom, to create that aspect, where the internet is a tool of freedom and not of fear. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Now, as we close off this session, allow me to thank each and every one of you for bringing your perspectives here and sharing them freely with us. It is not easy to navigate 8 people on a panel, so I hope that I did justice, and I hope that the information that you got was information that is good enough for use. But you know, I always have a wild card. All of you in this room, you didn't get a chance to ask your questions, but let me see how many of you in this room know at least one person whose life, a woman, okay, whose life or girl has been impacted by digital violence against women. One. Okay, put up your hands high. This is the majority of the room. This is the majority. So it shows you this is what we're dealing with in the region. Okay? It is real. And I want to thank each and every one of you who came here today to join us. Hopefully you will get to ask your questions over lunch or in other panels. And I want to use this opportunity to ask each and every one of us to recommit to the process. You may not be part of the legislation, but you are part of the solution to this problem, the implementation of that legislation. You are the eyes and the ears and the hands that can do something to make a difference. Let's all count ourselves in. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much to our panelists and our commentators. It was a very informative and educational session. We need to do a lot more of this here in Grenada and across the region. So we have now come to the close of the opening session of this important sub-regional consultation. This afternoon and continuing into tomorrow, participants will engage in focused working sessions to analyze and contribute to the draft model law on digital gender-based violence. So on behalf of the Ministry of Social and Community Development, Housing and Gender Affairs, I extend our deepest appreciation to all who have joined us this morning. Your participation affirms our collective resolve to eliminate violence against women in all its forms. Thank you, and we look forward to the impactful dialogue and collaboration that lies ahead. Once again, thank you very much.